Thank you, Ayad. Hello, I'm back. All right, and now we turn our attention to our first award tonight, the PEN Courage Award.
Across the country, outrage directed at the people making decisions about controlling this pandemic.
She needs to be fired.
3 in 10 say they've actually considered quitting, and I talked to several who actually are quitting their jobs, leaving medicine after sacrificing so much to get into this field.
The public health official called to testify during that meeting faced racial slurs, verbal attacks, and he said even physical intimidation as he was getting ready to leave.
Protesters showing up at her home, some with guns. This summer, she resigned.
Public health officials who have been harassed, threatened, and even sued responding to the pandemic.
I was escorted out of a public meeting about mask mandates because the sheriff's department thought that I was in danger.
Closing the beaches early in the pandemic was a tough decision for Santa Cruz County Public Health Director, Dr. Gail Newel, and made her a target of threats ever since.
The most worrisome ones were threats to my life and the life of my family members, especially my children.
This is a worldwide event. It affects whole populations. So we just implore everyone to be patient, be kind, do your part, and even more important, to just stick with us a little bit longer and wear the mask, wash your hands, stay at home.
Social media has played a huge role in misinformation and spreading of disinformation. So we want to drive home the importance today of everyone eligible in our community to get vaccinated for COVID-19. The time has never been more urgent.
My feelings of discomfort were coupled with compassion. And so while there were words used like communist and tyrant and fascist and a lot of accusations that there really wasn't a pandemic, I could always understand that these people came from their own place of fear, discomfort, anger, all of those things, and people need a place to put that.
The outpouring of support has been enormous for me and my coming forward and being willing to tell our stories. There's some indication now that it may be triggering some change that might protect health officials in some additional ways from higher levels.
For their fierce defense of truth in the face of relentless disinformation, this year's PEN Courage Award goes to Mimi Hall and Gail Newel.
Please welcome to the stage Andrew Solomon, former PEN America president, current trustee, and professor at Columbia University Medical Center.
Good evening. It's rather nice to be on this podium again after a few years and to see all of you. In today's America, claims of freedom of speech are often used to justify campaigns of disinformation. This has been obvious in crisis after crisis in American public policy, but nowhere so obviously as in the strange, to many of us utterly bewildering battle over COVID. We read news stories of people who are dying in ill-equipped hospitals and who say with their final breath, "I cannot be dying of COVID because there is no such thing." PEN asked that everyone attending this gala in person show a vaccine card, which seemed like mere common sense to most of us who are gathering, many for the first time in 2 years, in a large room full of strangers. Yet each of us has witnessed how acknowledging the virus has been cast as a priority of the left, while denying its very existence has become a pillar of the right. This conflict goes more squarely than any since the 1925 Scopes monkey trial into how truth must stare down ludicrous fictions based in prejudice, wishful thinking, paranoia, and social irresponsibility. In such a moment, scientifically informed health advocates who expected to spend their lives monitoring malpractice, ensuring cleanliness in public facilities, and making sure that hospital computers remain invulnerable to ransomware, have found themselves at the white-hot center of an often brutal debate. Saying that COVID is real has been not only contentious, but dangerous, with a remarkable mix of dignity and bravery. Gail, Newel, and Mimi Hall continued to elucidate the truth about what was happening, even as angry deniers tormented them, shouted them down, and endangered their safety and that of their children and families. The social precautions on which they insisted as part of an information-based strategy to contain a disease that has now killed 1 in 500 Americans undoubtedly saved lives. Furthermore, they helped to establish the protocol used by legions of other public health officials to stare down violent crowds across America. In their hands, simple undertakings, such as asking people to wear masks and wash their hands, became acts of grace. These two brave women never allowed their rationality to be enslaved by fear. PEN champions freedom of speech, but we are also champions of truth. The deliberate sowing of dangerous falsehoods is not within the purview of free speech. It is like shouting fire in a crowded theater. Systematic campaigns, spearheaded in part by the previous presidential administration and amplified on social media, sought to undermine the very idea of truth, to argue against the principle that we all inhabit a common reality, where differences of opinion are the fabric of democracy, but malign lies are tools of neo-fascistic social manipulation. In honoring Gail and Mimi, we champion those who do not back down when they encounter alternative facts, but rather insist on the truth. As he was led to the gallows, Galileo famously said, "And yet it moves." Gail and Mimi narrowly missed their own gallows, but they never missed an opportunity to defend science, to give humanity a better opportunity during this horrifying pandemic. For the truths they have championed and for the lives they have saved, we are honored to present to them the PEN Courage Award. Thank you.
My name is Gail Newel, and I stand for dignity, equity, and compassion. It's such an honor to be here tonight with all of you receiving the PEN Courage Award. To be able to share this award with my colleague and friend, Mimi Hall, makes it all the more meaningful. Thank you, Mimi. Thank you, too, to my wife, Kelly, world's best doctor, and my daughter, Madeline, who is here with me tonight, both of whom were by my side during protests at our home and threats to our lives. I have been a physician for 35 years. My father was a pediatrician, my mother, a poet. She's so proud of me to be here tonight. both active in our community, both modeling the importance of service to others as the embodiment of love. Throughout my medical practice, I learned from my patients how to be a better doctor and how to be a better person. I learned that the best healthcare is informed by science, yet driven by compassion, that it is equitable, that it must serve those who are the most disenfranchised and the least powerful. From an early age, I felt a fierce commitment to social justice and human rights. Perhaps this is rooted in my Mennonite upbringing, but it has certainly been heightened by my experiences as a woman in medicine, as a champion for reproductive rights, as someone who identifies as queer, and now as a public health officer. If there is one thing this pandemic has shown us, it's that social justice, with an emphasis on anti-racism, must be at the root of our efforts moving forward. I will leave it to others to study the political forces that have brought us to a place where facts and sound public policy are met with anger and denial. What I can tell you is that in the face of that anger, under the threats and vitriol of some of the members of our community, Mimi and I shared a set of values based on honesty, trust, and a recognition of systemic inequality. We both see this award as being for all of the public health workforce, so many of whom operate with this same set of values. Thank you, PEN America, for recognizing our courage and for amplifying the voice of public health during this unprecedented pandemic. Thank you for all you do to protect and celebrate free expression in the United States and worldwide. I'd like to close with a quote from one of my own favorite books, Olive Again, by the incomparable Elizabeth Strout. In a moment of rare introspection, the stoic Olive Kittredge muses about the meaning of life. Her best guess about what the human task may ultimately be in our catastrophic riddle of a world is to bear the burden of the mystery with as much grace as we can. Thank you for making that burden immeasurably easier to bear with your recognition tonight. I am forever grateful.
Thank you, Gail. It is such a privilege to be receiving this award with you, as you have been a source of strength and inspiration for me, and also so many of our colleagues. I echo Gail's deep appreciation for the attention this award brings in support of the public health workforce. I also owe thanks to my life partner, Tom, the love of my life, and our 3 children, one of whom is here with me tonight, Malia. But most of all, I need to thank my parents. It is their courage and their love for humanity that made my life of service possible. They were parents of 3 young children living in Myanmar, and they had lived through British rule, military dictatorship, decades of civil war that included human rights abuses and violence against ethnic minorities. They were determined that we were going to have a different life, a future of freedom for me and my brothers. As immigrants, they held tight to the belief that our uniquely American privileges were also an obligation for all of us to be of service. The values of equity, humanity, and courage were doctrines that they instilled in me through their sacrifices, and these have been the guideposts leading me through many years as a public servant. These are also the values that PEN America has staunchly upheld, previously giving awards to Burmese journalists who bravely reported on violent acts against humanity during the rule of the country's military junta. My parents' beliefs in civil and human rights has made my life's work in public health possible. The challenges of public health work over the last 2 years of the pandemic haven't been that much different than the last 20 or 30. Protecting the community, especially those most vulnerable in times of crisis, is always demanding. But only recently has it become disruptive and dangerous for health officials as well as our families. Like Gail, I feel we're here tonight on behalf of every public servant forced to be in this position, certainly just to pursue our duty, which is to protect our communities. The early steps many of us had to take to protect communities were gut-wrenching. We had phone calls from people saying, "I've lost my job, I can't pay my rent, I've lost my mother and my father." And it touches us as human beings, and the responsibility of life was not lost on us. The collective sacrifices of all of the individuals in all of our communities will be felt for years. The public health measures that we took were informed by science and medicine, but they also brought unprecedented hostility, fueled by disinformation and political divisiveness, amplified by social media, and they were extraordinary in their reach and their nature, and they have definitely posed a risk and a danger to our ongoing pandemic response in this nation. Following our duty to save lives has been dangerous and deeply traumatizing for us. We have been under assault, and so have our colleagues, by the very people whose lives we're working to save. But what I've witnessed in Gail and my fellow health officials and public servants is that when disaster presents itself, our commitment to humanity only becomes more clear. The rapid decline in civility during the pandemic, fueled by volatile political discourse, has been accelerated. The current environment attacking science, evidence, and public health officials who are acting in good faith continues to threaten the safety and the health of our nation. Without protection and support, the already scarce supply of qualified public health officials willing to serve in our roles will only decline. The mass exodus of public health officials, whether it's by force, exhaustion, or fear, has many of us calling this period of time the end of an era. The environment that exists today threatens lives, but it also threatens the very foundation of American democracy. Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors elected official Zach Friend said to me after a particularly ugly board meeting filled with hateful comments directed at me and Gail, a Latin phrase, "Quisa custodiata ipsos custodissa," or "Who will guard the guards themselves?" Thank you, PEN America, from the bottom of our hearts for being our guardians.